Thank you for listening. This is the Wyoming Photographic Podcast. All things photography from the state of Wyoming, featuring Wyoming-based photographers as well as photographers who travel from all over the world to photograph this wonderful state. I am your host, Jeff Footer, and we have an amazing show in store for you. Today we've got Kyle Spradley with us, author of the book Wyoming, A Photographic Journey. He's a specialist in landscapes.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello, Kyle. How are you today?
Good, good. And yourself?
Real good, thank you. Kyle, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So first off, I'm actually from St. Louis, Missouri. Uh, I've lived in Wyoming for probably close to 9 years now. I graduated from the University of Missouri with a degree in agricultural journalism, and back in 2009. So after that, I've worked in newspapers, magazines. I worked at the University of Missouri, my alma mater, for a couple of years, and then came out here to Wyoming in January of 2015 to be the videographer for the University of Wyoming. And so my background is mainly in kind of like photojournalism, storytelling, and but I've also worked in the marketing realm for probably a decade plus now. So back in June 2022, I left my job at the university to go full time with my own business that I've always kind of had on the side. And, it was always a side gig. I had enough clients and stuff built up that I decided to go full time with it. And it's been great. And over a year now, I've been doing that and have enjoyed it thoroughly. And, I've got clients all across the state from nonprofits to athletics to work for a local hospital lot, work for other colleges such as UW and Wild Tech, do a lot of event coverage, real estate, you name it. Anybody who wants to give me money to take some photos, I'll figure out a way to make it happen. But I also do a lot of video production, and that's probably outside of my outdoor landscape, nature, and lifestyle photography. That's probably what gets me the most hired jobs these days.
So what are some places you love to go in and around Wyoming to take photos?
Honestly, I like to go everywhere. A lot of which is kind of driven by my hired jobs where I go across the state for gigs. If I'm going up to, one area of the state for one job, I'll try to stay a couple of days and shoot some stuff. And, so I try to get to anywhere and everywhere. The Snowy Range Mountains in VW are right here in my backyard here in Laramie. So those are probably the most frequent places I kind of go to. But I just mainly just want to showcase public lands and in hopes of encouraging other people to get out and see the beauty across the state and stuff. Really like getting out to the non-Yellowstone Teton areas, that are a little bit less traveled and kind of showcase some places that might need some just kind of a little bit more exposure so people know about it, to help protect it and want to maybe go visit themselves. The Red Desert in particular is probably one of my favorite places that I've gone to a couple times. It's just so unique, and you don't see too many photos of it outside of Wyoming, and it's kind of a place that needs some, little of attention brought to it to help for protection and stuff. So, pretty much anywhere and everywhere across the state, and I find just as much enjoyment up in the winds as I do out on the plains and prairies. So, but definitely the mountains obviously calls, everybody the most. But yeah, I try to get to everywhere.
How do you prepare for a photo session? What are your biggest concerns prior to any kind of photo or video session?
I do a lot of research for my any kind of photo shoot. Whether it's being just simple portraits for a job or, if I'm gonna be going out shooting some landscapes, somewhere if I have to backpack in or hike in or drive long distance to. So there's a lot of pre-shoot scouting and planning that I do. Read a lot of books, look at a lot of maps, and kind of it takes a lot of driving around a lot of gravel roads in Wyoming to kind of see what's out there and find places and kind of scout it and see what how long it's going to take me to get there, how the light's going to fall, what time of year is best to kind of go there. So there's a lot of pre-planning ahead of time. It's not just walk out there, get out of the car, and boom, that's it. It's pretty rare that that happens. So I like to spend a lot of time looking at places ahead of time.
Speaking of books, you wrote a book, Wyoming: A Photographic Journey. Can you tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about that?
Oh yeah, so that was a project that was finished, I guess, in 2018, and it includes photos from all across the state, every corner from Tetons to Snowy Range to Devil's Tower to Bighorns to Red Desert. It was the publishing company came to me and approached me about the idea of it, and they just kind of wanted photos from every corner of the state. And at that time, I only had been living in the state for about 2 years or so, so I had a good amount, but not every corner. And so I kind of told them, I was like, hey, I don't really have everything they were kind of asking for. And so I asked them if they'd give me about a half a year to a year to go shoot some stuff. So I ended up making the whole summer and winter, about 9 months of shooting nonstop. Probably drove, I think it was close to around 5,000 miles around the state in just like 6 or 9 months, and try to get every corner of the state as possible to kind of feature in this book because they wanted to sell it in gift shops around the state and every corner of the state. I've seen it at Fort Laramie. I've seen it up in the Tetons. I've seen it at bookstores in Sheridan. So it's kind of sold all over the place, and the publishing company kind of handles that side of it. And I just had to kind of take the photos and provide the content, the written content, and they kind of gave me a list of places they would like, and then I submitted probably like 1,000 or 2,000 photos to them, and then they picked and designed it all, and then I wrote the captions kind of after that, and kind of included, some history about the areas. It wasn't just like one sentence things, kind of some, expanded kind of information about each location, but it was a pretty fun project, and it got me, kind of kickstarted me to get to every corner of the state, and it's pretty fun to see it sold in stores, all over the state like that.
Which social media platform do you use most, and what do you prefer?
So I would say, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, uh, Threads. Those are kind of the main ones there. Um, I'm not a huge social media person. I kind of like to do it just to because I know it's a necessary evil, but I definitely like to share stuff that I'm shooting on there. But that's probably I mainly probably only share probably half of what I my work is. I mainly only share kind of my landscape, outdoor nature photography stuff on my social media accounts. A lot of my other commercial work, video work, and that kind of stuff, I don't really share that too much on there. Just kind of keep it consistent with the pretty nature stuff.
And I follow you on Instagram. I really like your
Hmm.
photos. They're
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. They're really
Appreciate
impressive. And what is
Thank you.
the best compliment you've ever received for a photo?
It's hard to say like one moment or one kind of thing that somebody said that sticks out to me. I think for me, just the biggest compliment I've been getting is just, people are wanting to buy any of my prints or buy my book or, hire me for any jobs. I mean, that's to me is a big compliment because being a small business owner of just myself, and every little sale and every job hire goes a long way and puts food on the table for my family. So I would say just the biggest compliment I feel like is anytime anybody wants to spend their hard-earned money on buying a print or my book or hiring me to provide visuals. I feel like that's kind of my strong suit is, I may not be the best shooter out there, the best, video producer, but I try to be a good people person. And I feel like if you're good to people, then you'll just keep getting hired and hired, and then, let your work and your people skills speak for itself. I mean, you could have a great portfolio and everything, but if you're not a good kind of people person and good customer service side of it, then you're probably not going to get hired as much. Whereas almost all my clients are repeat clients and they keep coming back to me. And that's the biggest compliment I can say that I have is that they're wanting to keep coming back to me. And I appreciate them, supporting my work and support what I like to do for a living here.
What would you consider the best single photo or one of the best photos you've ever taken?
That's another one that's pretty kind of hard to kind of lay down to kind of specific moment or experiences. Because I mean, it always seems like photos are just always so subjective. It's my favorite photo that I like is probably more because of the background where I had to get to it. I had to research a spot, I had to fight through a million mosquitoes or something, or hike a long way or something. So those kind of things, kind of some photos, sit more personal to me as my favorite just because of my experience that I had shooting it. Uh, I do a lot of sports photography and action and events. So, I mean, there's a lot of big sports moments that kind of stand out and stuff like that. Big wins at UW or, for basketball, football, or women's sports and stuff like that always kind of stand out. I do a lot of journalism coverage. So, covering natural disasters or big newsworthy events, always kind of stand out to me. But I mean, one of my best-selling images is a image that I shot just like out of the car at Olympic National Park in a rainy day of just a generic kind of looking forest. But it's like it's not even my top 10 favorite photos, but it's like the most sold on the websites. I got a big print of it in my house, and everybody comes in the house just loves it. And it's one of my wife's favorite photos too. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool and all, but it's not the most technical. It didn't require much. So I mean, it's always kind of interesting what people like is, the kind of their favorites versus what you like. Because like I said, for me, when I look at some of my photos, I think about the experience that I had. You saw a moose there, or you saw a family of deer, or just like a cool moment, while you were out in a place or, experiencing something versus just like that one particular photo. So uh sorry, that's not like this one photo is my top favorite, but I mean, it's kind of like trying to pick your favorite kid. So it's tough to nail down just one.
Yep, absolutely. I get that completely. And it is interesting. Sometimes I'll share a group of photos on Instagram or something and think, okay, people are going to absolutely love these few photos. And it's a
Hmm.
completely different photo. Everybody comments on, everybody likes,
Yeah,
and it's like, really, people? This one is not even that good.
yeah, I know. It's sometimes the photos taken at noon, with just not really that anything amazing light or anything, and yeah, social media blows up on it. Whereas something I spent a lot of time getting and shooting and post production editing and all this blah 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 hoopla goes into it and it doesn't get anything. Whereas the one I took at noon and out of the car always, gets the most likes. So yeah, it's always interesting and so subjective about what people like the most, for sure.
How do you convey mood in your photos? Is there a special way you compose the photo or use certain other creative elements to bring it out?
I'm kind of like the classic landscape photographer. I know a big thing on social media is kind of always including people, people for scale or just people out doing stuff in the environment. But for me, I just kind of like to let the sheer beauty of the place, shine through. So I like the classic landscapes. I don't like to overly process images. I don't like to, you know, overly, overlight something or something like that. So, I mean, a lot of my stuff is just kind of real vibrant colors and just, the classic landscape look. The vibrancy kind of comes from the fact that I'm colorblind. And so when I'm editing, I sometimes have to pop up the vibrancy a little bit, or I almost always use circular polarizers to kind of get that color to pop too. Because for me, then it allows me to see the colors better. And so I'm guessing that's why some people always say your photos are always so vivid and pop off the screen, like it feels like it's you're kind of right there in the scene, because my color blindness, I kind of have to get some differentiation in the colors to kind of be able to tell them. So, but yeah, like I said, my my style is just kind of naturalistic landscapes and try to keep things as close to how I saw it when I was there.
I did notice you have a bunch of black and whites. Does your
Mhm.
color blindness play into why you use black and white?
Uh, I don't think so, but I just I mean the classic black and white just I mean there's something timeless about it. It's just so I mean landscapes just kind of yield to it, and I don't think there's a science in my eye of like saying, oh, this is gonna be a good black and white image. Maybe it's just kind of like you're kind of feeling it. You know, like oh, this would kind of look good black and white. I started in the days of the dark room, in high school and stuff like that, and still love that classic timeless photos of Ansel Adams and stuff like that, were just the classic black and white landscapes, and the textures and the tonality and the lighting is what shines, and not so much the color. And yeah, I don't think it really has as much to do with my color blindness. Just I love that classic, black and white image. You just can't beat it. There's a reason why it hasn't gone away in 100 plus years of photography, and it probably never will. It's just classic and pretty, and it just looks nice.
Now, if you could sit down with any historical photographer in history and have a conversation with them, who would that be and why?
For me, it would probably be, I hate, cliche is answer for any landscape photographers, Ansel Adams, but I mean, he was kind of the one that kind of got me first started, into looking at landscape photos, and Art Wolf was another one when I was growing up that, you go to the bookstores and look at the photo books, and his books were always there, and just his classic landscapes and just beautiful nature and wildlife photography always kind of was my inspiration to kind of start doing the things that I do. But I mean, historically, I would maybe say like William Henry Jackson, just because he photographed everything from the Civil War to some of the first white expeditions out in the West. He went on the Yellowstone expeditions, the Hayden expeditions, and took the first kind of photos of the area that kind of helped establish it as a national park. He obviously wasn't a part of the team that was the first ones there, because Native Americans have been there for thousands, millions of years, but kind of the first one to, really kind of capture the modern photography images of the parks and the West out here that kind of got people out east to know about it and start the national parks movement. So he's one guy that always kind of historically always kind of pops into my mind, because he was again like the classic kind of landscape stuff. And I mean, he's got photos from the 1870s in the Wind Rivers, which I can't imagine getting up there in that time with the glass plates and everything. And I complain about now how heavy my backpack is when I go back there. I couldn't imagine what it
And
was like having to keep that gear intact.
and with those
So
glass plates, I think they had to develop it right there
yeah.
on site, so they had
Hmm.
to
A
carry a
lot of
darkroom with them.
chemicals. Yeah. So, I mean, just like stuff like that, those experiences. Because I mean, you know, he hadn't seen it, and a lot of people hadn't seen photos of that place. So they had no idea, what Old Faithful was going to look like. They had heard stories from the Native Americans, about these geysers and stuff. But I mean, to like see it for the first time and not know what to expect. I mean, nowadays we kind of, you go to a place, you kind of know what to expect, based on, seeing things online and stuff. And so that would just be kind of wild to hear some of his stories of just those experiences.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Yellowstone is fascinating. I remember going when I was 10, and even knowing about
Hmm.
geysers and things, I was absolutely in awe. I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine going, just hearing a few stories about it and seeing that for the first time. That would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Now, how would you recommend somebody would go about getting into landscape photography?
The first thing I would say is, you know, people are always, asking about, what kind of camera gear do I need to get to take a good photo? What do I need? And I mean, honestly, like people sometimes focus too much on the gear, I feel like, and feel like they need to spend $10,000 to get a good photo. And I say, I mean, use the best camera is the one you have with you. So I mean, use whatever you have. It could be your iPhone or whatever, and get out into these places and just start messing with the composition, start looking at things that are out there, work the scene, where, learn about manual settings. I feel that's a huge thing that I see a lot of up and coming photographers nowadays. They don't seem to know how to fully shoot in manual. And I mean, I'm not very old, but I hate to sound like the old curmudgeon, be like back in my day. But I mean, we started with manual film cameras, and so you had to learn the exposure triangle. You had to learn, ISO film speeds, because I mean, if you didn't, you were literally wasting money on each shot that you screwed up. Whereas nowadays you can go out with digital and experiment and try things and learn things, and not, it doesn't necessarily cost you besides the purchasing of the gear. And so that's why I say it's people learn your camera settings, learn how the camera works. Don't just look at the back of that LCD screen the whole time, and really learn how your camera in the exposure triangle works, and also how you can use your certain settings to your advantage, like you were mentioning, like mood, or expression, or long exposures, short exposures, brightness, darkness. Like, I mean, use those to your advantage, and just get out there and shoot with what you have. I think there's that focus too much on that. I got to get the latest and greatest. Whereas, I mean, some of my gear that I have is 10, 20 years old, and I love it. It's great, but that's to learn how the camera truly functions, and just get out there and experiment, be okay to fail, try stuff, because that's how you all learn. I've failed thousands of times with stuff, and that's how you learn, is you just you screw up once. That's a learning experience, and that's got to be something you got to be willing to try.
And yeah, for me, I think I learned uh, manual settings long before I learned composition or anything else,
Hmm.
and just with an old film camera. And I was surprised. I went to a free workshop in South Pass City a few nights ago, and a night photography workshop. And I was shocked how many people couldn't figure out how to get their camera into manual mode, or change an
Yeah.
aperture, or turn on, turn off autofocus. It was
Hmm.
just kind of shocking how many people were
Yeah.
clueless as far as any setting on their camera.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something I think is just so crucial. You gotta start with the basics, and the basics are, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. That you know you got to learn that, because then you know how to control the camera, and use it to your advantage. And I mean, I can take some great photos with my iPhone better than somebody who's got a $10,000 rig and doesn't know how to use it. It's not bragging about myself. It's just you got to know how to work the camera and work your equipment to your advantage, and that's so crucial for sure.
So, if you were able to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you first started photography, is that what that piece of advice would be, or something else?
Uh, you know, I don't say as much for me, because again, like I said, I had that experience just like you with the film camera stuff and the dark room, and knowing, that manual exposure kind of things. You know, um, I would say, get out and try stuff. If an opportunity comes up for you to go tag along with something, or go somewhere with somebody, like, do it. Like, that's kind of, use your camera as your like passport to kind of get to places. And I've had a lot of amazing experiences and gone to some really cool places that I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to go. But it was somebody asking, "Hey, do you want to go to the Canary Islands for 2 weeks with some students and shoot photos, and we need somebody to go take photos." And I'm like, heck yeah, And so I mean, it's just kind of like, use your camera as an opportunity to get out and try things and experience things and go places. And if somebody's offering to pay you to go somewhere or do something, or maybe if it's even not a whole lot of money, just do it. Because when I was in college, that was something I didn't do a lot of, was internships, or career shadowing and anything like that. And I feel like, uh, yeah, if I would have done that a little bit more, in my college age, that might have helped, me down the road. Because connections with people are just so huge. I mean, every job I've ever had has almost all come from connections, or because of somebody I know. So it's I'm thankful for those kind of people to know and have that kind of networking to rely on, and just yeah, just if anything comes up, an opportunity to go or experience something, you got to go do it, because you never know what you're going to be able to get because of your camera. So that's something I always tell folks is just get out there and go do stuff.
What is one question you hate being asked?
I would say, wow, your camera takes great photos. You must have an expensive camera. So I guess that's not really a question, but just always a thing. And it's like, uh, yeah, I taught the camera everything it knows. That's why it takes good photos. It kind of goes back to that again that, people think that, gear is what makes a good photo, and it's really not. So I mean, I think that's probably the one I get asked the most is, wow, that photo is so amazing. You must have really expensive gear, really nice gear. And it's like, yeah, that might have helped and might have in a few situations, but like again, like the gear doesn't dictate the image, it's the eye, the composition, the getting there at the right moment, doing your research about where to be at and, trying things. I think that's kind of a big thing, or, also the fact that people are always like, we love your photos, but we don't have a budget. We just want to give you exposure, and it's like, yeah, exposure can help, but it doesn't put food on the table kind of thing. So, I mean, there's always that. I think people should be, paid for their skills, paid for their work, content creators these days. I feel like you're taken advantage of a little bit because it's all digital and people think it doesn't cost anything. And it still costs investment and but more importantly, it costs my knowledge. My knowledge is worth a lot and I should get paid for it. And some people think that just because it's digital and it's just a photo, like it doesn't need to get paid for. And I feel like people should get paid for it. And I see people getting taken advantage of a lot that in the industry that you know, just because it was a good photo doesn't mean like they can't make money off it no matter what the situation is. So I wish there was a little bit more respect on that end of, people asking for photos and works and thinks it's so amazing, but they don't want to pay a dollar for it. I know there's certain situations with donations and stuff, but um, the paying content creators for their content creation, I think, is just so huge these days as well.
Yeah, and so my next question was going to be what your thoughts on AI as far as how it's affecting photography. And one way that I see it affecting photography in a very, very serious way are the watermark removers.
hmm Yeah, I mean, again, not to sound like an old curmudgeon, but I absolutely hate it. One, it takes away potential jobs from photographers. Instead of hiring somebody to take a photo, somebody just types it into AI and creates an image. So that right there is already taking money out of people's pockets. And a lot of that AI, I don't know everything about it, but from my knowledge about it is a lot of the AI comes from other people's images already. So it's scouring what's out there for images already created to make, its own image. So I mean, it's technically kind of, and we've seen a few cases of that already where an AI created thing is taking somebody else's already created content and, like you said, removing that watermark or something like that. And so I mean, personally, it opened a Pandora's box that we should not be going down. And I know it has some good things that it can do and helpful out in some areas, but I think in the long run, it's going to hurt photographers and it's going to, there's a lot of possibility of stealing people's images or compositions or something like that, likenesses and but biggest thing of all is it's taking away a job for like myself. If somebody wants to hire me to shoot photos of something, well, why don't we just spend $50 to go on an AI site and create it instead of paying him a couple hundred to $1,000 for it? So I mean, in the long run, it could be hurting your local economy for sure, because you're not giving money to local people, you're giving it to some software company that probably has no connection to Wyoming. And why don't you help your neighbor out and support your local photographers? So I mean, I am completely against it. I can't stand it, and I wish it needs to be kind of roped in a little bit here before it kind of gets worse down the road.
So when you go on a photo shoot, what are some essential items you take with you when you go?
It kind of depends on the situation. If it's, portrait session or, commercial shoot, there's a lot of prime lenses involved with that, a lot of portrait lenses. But on the other hand, if it's a landscape shoot, I almost always have my ultra wide lens, medium lens, and some long telephotos, if you spot any wildlife or needed to compress the scene for other, kind of composition things. So, but always in my bag are polarizing filters, graduated ND filters. I bring the drone a lot too to get some aerial shots to be able to provide me some different perspectives and angles. And usually almost always bring two tripods. I got one camera running time lapses, the other one's shooting photo and video. So I'm a pack mule a lot with carrying way too much stuff a lot of times, but trying to be in a one-man band, you try to get everything you can in a certain location. So it kind of varies depending on the spot, but for the most part, that's probably the majority of what's in the bag.
I've got way too much stuff in my bag. My 7-year-old kid was wanting to do some weightlifting the other day, so he was picking up my camera bag and using that as a weight.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, for sure, definitely.
so, are there any topics today that we didn't cover that you'd like to elaborate on at all?
I'm just kind of going through, just kind of thinking about stuff, but no, I think you hit it pretty well. The advice stuff, thinking about, you know, things. And I mean, the biggest thing I'd like to, like I said, kind of hit it earlier was with my work. I like to showcase a lot of public lands to just kind of show people what's out there. And hopefully, it spurs somebody to maybe want to go out and visit a place or see something or, more importantly, know about it. So, if it needs some protection and some awareness brought to it, there's that. And I just hope other people just get out and explore what's in their own backyards and see what's out there because there's just a lot of cool stuff. And a lot of the places I go to are not, you know, extraordinary remote or anything, and so there's a lot of neat stuff out there. And I just hope people get out there and experience it themselves because it's out there for all of us.
How would listeners go about finding your work?
So my website is kspradleyphoto.com. Or if you want to find me on social media, all my handles are K Spradley Photo, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days, Threads, all those kind of places. You can find me there. Yeah, I'm open to anything and everything, photo, video wise, for clients, or something like that. I've done everything from, real estate to, event coverage to video production for companies for commercial work to, as being, like I mentioned earlier, a drone pilot. Got my FAA license and shoot tons of drone stuff there. So, I mean, I'm kind of anything and everything I'm kind of dabble in. If you'd like to, work with me to get some visuals, I'd be glad to cater to somebody.
All right. It was really great talking to you today. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, likewise, Jeff.
This has been the Wyoming Photographic Podcast, all things photography in the state of Wyoming. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.